Hey everybody, Adam here from Menta Watches. Welcome back to the channel. We just listed 18 fantastic new vintage watches on the website. We're not going to go through all of them because that's going to take a lot of time, so I picked out some of my, I can't say favorites because they're all my favorites, but some ones that I thought were worth talking about. Let's jump right in. I only picked out 2 vintage Rolex this week because I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of hearing me talk about vintage Rolex week after week, so let's start with those and just get them out of the way. One is on my wrist. It is a reference 5513 Submariner from, I think it's like circa 1981. It is a Maxi dial, meaning that the lume plots are a little bit bigger than their predecessors. The Maxi name kind of carried over into the modern era, and you'll hear it be referred to Maxi dials in the modern era as well on the newer ceramic stuff and earlier stuff. So this is a Maxi MK4, so 4th execution of the Maxi dial. I'm wearing it because, first of all, Submariner is just a great watch to throw on all the time, but I'm in love with the condition of this watch. It is absolutely perfect, you know, as good as it gets, unpolished, perfect dial, perfect bezel, perfect lume, original bracelet, all the good stuff. So I just felt like throwing it on today. But also, if you've watched this channel before in the past, you know that my favorite sports vintage Rolex is the GMT-Master. I wear them all the time. I own them all the time. We have a ton always listed on the website, and we have a doozy. It really took a lot for me not to want to keep this watch or not to keep it. I was actually strongly considering it. We have a 1675 matte dial with a Mark II dial. This one is circa 72, 73. The reason I love this watch is sometimes, like we've talked about, the watches just speak to you, and the aesthetic of this one is absolutely fantastic. It has this beautiful pumpkin patina, unpolished case, original Jubilee bracelet dated to 1972, and this incredible fat font bezel with a nice fade to the red portion of the bezel on the bottom, giving it this nice pink color. Jordan actually picked this one up while I was away in Japan. The guy brought it to our office and he was able to buy it from him. It is just a spectacular, spectacular example. Everything you want in a GMT-Master. Looking at it now, it really pains me not to keep this watch, but it is available on the website if you guys want to check it out. So we have a lot of other really interesting watches, some stuff that we've never had before, some stuff that we rarely get. I'm going to jump in. We have a bunch of Royal Oaks on the site. You guys know I love Royal Oaks. My favorite integrated bracelet sports watch. So let's jump right into those and get them out of the way and then talk about the more rare niche esoteric stuff. We have another reference 5402, the very first Royal Oak hitting the website. Absolutely, probably, it's hard to say my favorite Royal Oak of all time, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. I really think Audemars Piguet and even Patek Philippe did their best jobs with the 5402 and the 3700 Nautilus the first time out the gate. These were perfect from the first iteration, and for me, they only got incrementally worse as the years went on, as technology increased, and they tried to make them sturdier and more capable. For me, they lost a lot of the charm. But anyways, we have actually the earliest 5402 we've ever had in the office. This is number 108 in production, and the crazy part about this one, other than the condition being absolutely beautiful with perfect dial, perfect tritium lume, perfect everything, it is the second 5402 in all the 5402s we've sold in the past 12 years with the box and papers. We have only ever had 2, and actually I think they both came this year. One was a C series, first one, and this is the second one. This is the original 5402 box. They did change this box later on as they went into the CD series, but this is the original 5402 box. It is extremely hard to track down. I remember I was bidding on one in Antiquorm a couple years back, and it sold for, I don't know, like $15,000 or crazy number, 20,000, some crazy amount. But this is the original box, original paperwork, which you very rarely see, that has the movement serial number listed here, the date, where it was sold. I think this is Germany, dated May 29th, 1973, and the original Audemars Piguet Royal Oak instruction manual, or brochure, I guess you should say, you know, talking about the movement in German. So this must have been sold in Germany with other models in here. Just really something awesome that you never get to see. Even this brochure, you never really get to see it. So it really, for me, is just a piece of history. So cool to have. I'm going to be sad when it leaves the shop. The other Royal Oak is arguably my favorite reference other than the 5402, although I can't say this reference specifically, but just more the general idea of the watch. It is a jumbo Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar. This is an early iteration, the reference 25654 ST. The 25554 was the very first perpetual jumbo that they made in the Royal Oak. The 25654 followed that, making the watch a little bit thicker and some very incremental upgrades. It is still considered an early iteration of the Perpetual Royal Oak. You have the MK1 small font on the dial. You have no leap year indicator on the dial. They did away with later on, and you still have smooth dial variants, or I guess you can call them flat or matte dial variants, whereas they changed the tapestry dials later on. This one is steel, like I said, with a gray dial, kind of tone on tone. Actually a very rare variant. You do not see a lot of these. And the 25654, of like the 830 some odd pieces they made, they only made like a third of those in steel. They made more solid gold than they did in stainless steel, making steel much rare. This one comes with its certificate of authenticity from AP and its original AP winder box. Honestly, it really is just a spectacular and beautiful and understated watch. I don't understand why AP doesn't do more kind of tone on tone stuff. Usually you'll see this steel watch with a white dial or just something stark different. I love this kind of, monotone kind of look, and I know collectors are flocking to all the Doré dial stuff, which is, kind of gold with champagne dial, that matching aesthetic. And this watch certainly fits the build. Stunning condition on this one as well. Just serviced by our watchmaker. Fantastic, fantastic watch. And I think this is the first gray dial we've ever had in this reference of all the ones we sold in the past. Moving along, and I didn't do this on purpose, although I probably should have thought about this a little better when I was picking out the watches to talk. We have mostly Patek left, with two other watches, one from AP and one from a surprise Franck Muller. Let's jump into the Franck Muller, and I'm going to be honest, friends, I don't know a ton about this watch or about the brand. I know just the basics. I grew up as a watch collector. I started getting into watches when I was in my teens, but really took off in my 20s. And I remember lusting after a Franck Muller. I wanted the crazy hours just like everybody else at the time. Franck Muller used to be one of the hottest watches or hottest brands that you could buy in my early 20s. They could not sell them fast enough. A lot of things have changed since then. Obviously, Franck Muller, while still respected, is not the brand in terms of collectability that it once was. We see a little more interest in the brand now because there is a lot of value. We just had an Imperial Tourbillon that we sold. The retail price on that watch was like $235,000, and we sold it for under $100K. Crazy value. Tourbillon minute repeater wristwatch in a solid gold case for under $100K when the retail was over $200 is ridiculous. And this for me represents incredible similar value. It's a little bit smaller of a case than that Imperial Tourbillon. This is a reference 7500QP. It is a perpetual calendar wristwatch in platinum with Breguet numerals. It has original box and papers, and it is under $20,000. I think it is going to be hard to find something comparable to that at that price point from such a prestigious brand in a precious metal that's not like a quartz watch or something, that you really don't want. I honestly don't understand how these remain so cheap. It kind of reminds me of the watch we could talk about next, the 3940, that were slept on for so long until people finally woke up and realized that they represented tremendous value in the watch for what you were paying, and prices started to increase. This, by the way, is also number 6 on the back. I don't know how many they produced, but low production, or at least low serial number on this example. So since I brought up the 3940, let's jump over to Patek for a second. We do have a 3940 in stock. The 3940, the 3970, we talked about for years that prices were just so low and stable for so many years that they were so slept on, and they represented such tremendous value in what you were getting for what you were paying. I think even though prices have increased a little bit on the 3940 and they are way more collectible now than they were a few years ago, I still think they're tremendous value, and I still think they have room to grow. But regardless of the financial side of watch collecting, I just absolutely adore these watches. These were produced from like 1985 to 2007, I want to say. Maybe somebody correct me if that's wrong. 3940 was Patek's perpetual calendar watch, and it was made at a time while they were still going through the quartz crisis. So it was Patek's kind of, them keeping their stronghold on high-end mechanical watchmaking. I love the 3940. I love the size of it. I love the shape of it. I love all the functionality of it. This one is a 4th series in platinum, which is one of the hardest ones to find. Platinum cases. It is a full set box and papers, hang tags, all the brochures, everything. This is the winding box here you can see in red. The 3940Ps didn't come with an extra sapphire case back. I believe those were only upon request. Like if you bought it brand new, you could request them to make one. so it only has the solid back, which for me gives it more of a vintage feel to the watch. Anyways, absolutely fantastic watch. This one is in excellent mint condition, seemingly very rarely used, but it was produced in the early 2000s, so you would say probably it had less time to be worn as much as like an earlier first or second series. Sticking with Patek for a second, because we only have one other brand on the table, which is Audemars Piguet, and only one watch from them. Let's jump over to the watch. Since I brought up the Quartz Crisis right next to it, we do have a Quartz Crisis Patek on the table. This is the reference 3603 in white gold, so 3603G, Beta 21 movement watch. The Beta 21 movement watch was Switzerland and 20 different brands' efforts as a consortium to develop a quartz movement in the early 60s. They started with the Beta 1, and then they refined it in the late 60s with the Beta 2, and inevitably all these different brands released watches with this Beta 21 quartz movement. It was very thick, so that's why you see these Beta 21 watches in these thick cases. And you have to understand, this is at a time when everybody's kind of panicking. Is quartz going to take over the world? Is mechanical watchmaking going to be appreciated or not? And it's also at a time when watchmaking, because this watch was produced in 1973 according to the archive, so a very early quartz watch for Patek, at a time where watches were generally very small from the maker, and this watch wears like a much bigger contemporary watch. I personally talked about on the channel, talked about it in the last video, I think Jordan and Darren both talked about it, how I'm not so quick, and I know they aren't either, and I know a lot of other people aren't, to kind of just throw away to the side quartz watches, especially from this era. It represents an important part in the history of watchmaking and hot horology. I think an interesting time. I think it's interesting to kind of think back as to what was happening at that time when all these brands were freaking out. Kind of reminds me of what we went through a few years ago with the Apple Watch, and everybody was freaking out saying, oh, it's going to take over and no one's going to collect these mechanical wristwatches anymore. If anything, it did quite the opposite, in my opinion. It got more people into high-end watchmaking. They would buy the Apple Watch as a tool to be used, you know, to monitor their health or read their text messages or make a phone call, but it didn't give them that itch of wearing something that's truly a piece of art or a piece of history, or just something that you could look down and kind of smile at, or, you know, for the people who use these as kind of a flex or a social status thing. It didn't give you that, and it drew more people into buying real mechanical watches. So anyways, I never discredit or discount quartz watches, especially from this era. I think they're fantastic. Darren even commented in the last video, which I actually absolutely agree with, that you don't have to set the time on your quartz watch. You don't have to worry so much about an automatic or manual wine watch stopping if you don't wear it for a few days, and it will still be on time. They're very accurate, and they're interesting. This one, again, with a blue dial, white gold case, great size, rare, very difficult to find. I don't think there's any available in white gold right now on the market with its extract and on the website, and just fantastic watch. Fantastic watch for somebody who wants something a little different and off the beaten path, Mr. Enthusiast style. Shout out to Phil, owner of Toledano and channel. Also check out his brand as well. Fantastic watches they are creating. Well, you know what? We have two watches that are similar, the Patek and the one AP on the table, because they are both quote unquote Disco Volante style watches. Disco Volante is Italian for like flying saucer. For me, I like to call it like the UFO watches. They look like UFOs. We have one from AP. We have one from Patek. Let's start with the one from AP. Thanks to our dear friend Adam Victor. Give him a follow on Instagram at ABV33. He is a very astute scholar of all things vintage AP. He's a fantastic guy, fantastic collector. Also sells a few watches here and there, but has fantastic taste. He was able to help me track down the year on this watch and also the reference. These early Disco Volante APs started out as quote unquote pre-references. So before AP started giving them reference numbers, and this one was just on the cusp. He was able to help me figure out that this is one of the earliest ones to have a reference number. It is reference 524 if memory serves, and it was produced circa 1945. To be honest, besides all of that, when this watch was offered to me from a collector out of Indonesia, I just had to buy it because the condition is so excellent. Again, from a watch from 1945, a lot of these Disco Volantes from this era, and they were produced by AP, I think through the 70s, did not age well because these were not waterproof cases, and so you see a lot of them with very stained dials, kind of messed up cases. This one, it was in fantastic fantastic condition. He said it was the nicest he had ever seen, and I kind of tend to agree with him. It's in solid 18 karat yellow gold. It has this amazing bezel that has graved Roman numerals around the outside, and like I said, the dial's in fantastic condition, completely unrestored, not a lot of patina or wear on it, just a stellar watch that is very hard to find. And these early Disco Volantes are very collectible. They started producing more of them as in production increased significantly in the 60s and 70s. I think the size is a little bit bigger on those, but they made a lot more of them. Fantastic example if you're one of those early AP enthusiasts and lovers like I am. Okay, moving on to the other Disco Volante we have in stock. This one is from Patek Philippe. It is a reference 2594P. This reference, I believe, was only produced for a couple of years from like 1958 to 1960. It's a pretty hard reference to track down by itself, regardless of the metal. This one happens to be in platinum, excellent condition, near perfect dial, and it's on Patek Platinum bracelet that we know was the bracelet that was born on the watch because it says it directly on the extract of the archives from Patek that it was born on a platinum bracelet. Fantastic watch, honestly. It comes in a little small, like 32, 33 millimeters. I mean, at least not for me too small, but for a lot of people too small. But I've been wearing this watch a lot, and it is such a cool vibe on the wrist. It's so fantastic to see. You just do not see these watches. If you Google the reference, you'll see that there are not a lot of these that pop up for sale. Very often 2-year production run. So excited to have both of these Disco Volantes in stock. I don't even know which one I would go for if I was picking one to keep. Man, that's a tough call. Probably, I love bracelets, so probably the Patek. You know, the fact that this one's integrated leather strap and this one has a bracelet that you could take off and also put on a leather strap probably does it for me. The last two watches I'm super duper excited to have in stock. We do not get them very often. A lot of the times they're not in great condition. They're super heavily restored or they're very difficult to buy. People want a lot of money for them. They are two Patek Chronographs reference 130. The reference 130 was actually the first reference of a chronograph to be serially produced by Patek. We have two of them from the 1940s. I think they started production on these in the mid-1930s, like 34, 35, and they ran for like 30 years through the mid-60s. These are both from the 1940s, so relatively early on in production. I think this one on my right in rose gold is like 1943, and the steel one on my left is 1947, if memory serves. Let's start with the rose gold one. While at first glance, it looks like just a typical rose gold 130, when you look closer, this is a very special example. Why? Just because it is probably the most well-preserved 130 I've ever seen, potentially. The condition is spectacular. The case is incredible. Strong hallmark, strong lugs, dial's beautiful. Doesn't seem like it's ever been cleaned. There's no wear. There's a very slight patina you could see between the 7 and 8 o'clock markers, like a nice tint to the dial. But for me, that just shows the authenticity and originality of the watch. Absolutely spectacular museum quality example. It comes from a great collector out of California who went back and forth for months about selling it, but ultimately he wants to move on to something new, and he's enjoyed it for a fair amount of time. It is available for sale now on the site, and looking for its next caretaker, and whoever picks this up is not going to be disappointed. On our left, in the same era of Patek, again from the 1940s, this one, while the condition is not as spectacular as the rose gold one, it is a little bit more special for two key reasons. Number one, it was produced in stainless steel, which if you are a fan of vintage Patek, you know that Patek did not produce a lot of watches in stainless steel. They produced mostly watches in precious metals because they were a high-end luxury brand that only wanted to produce in precious metals. But also, especially during this time, during the 1940s, most brands were required by their local governments to provide all steel to the governments for military production of weapons during wartime. So most brands, especially Patek, did not produce a lot of watches in steel at the time, and so you see very few stainless steel reference of any reference Patek Philippe, and when you do find them, they are probably the most collectible of all Patek out there and most coveted by collectors. So this is a 1947 Patek Philippe Chronograph reference 130 in stainless steel, and on top of that, it was fit as confirmed by the extract of the archives with a two-tone appearance sector dial. So that means we have a tachometer scale on the outside with a sector dial on the inside. It was used for keeping more accurate timekeeping. It is one of the rarest dials you could get on any vintage Patek, and besides its rarity, it just looks the business. It is the coolest dial I think that Patek or any brand ever produced. Lots of brands produce sector dials. This particular style of sector dial for me is the absolute coolest. Probably the absolute coolest for most collectors because it is the most desirable. It's taking a lot out of me not to keep this watch in my personal collection, but it is begrudgingly for sale, and more information is available on the website. Two incredibly rare 130s. It is just such a shock to have them both for sale at the same time. Really, really excited. Yeah, I think I might have to change and put this 130 on instead of sorry, Maxi sub. I love you too, though. Anyways, that about wraps it up for this video. Hope you enjoyed watching. Like I said before, there are other watches available on the website. Go check them out. We didn't want to drag this out for 2 hours going through every single watch. We picked out some of our favorites, but there's some other excellent stuff on the website. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you are interested in any of these pieces or need extra information, feel free to reach out to us on our website, on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you are watching this video. As always, thanks so much for watching. See you guys in the next one. Bye.